Morning America. New overnight, fighting back President Trump, plagued by questions over his campaign's contacts with Russia, shifting the focus, calling out Senate and House Democratic leaders over these photos. The timeline of events that may offer clues about the contacts with the Kremlin.
We need to know, is anyone compromised?
Plus the new move by Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Immigration crackdown. The young girl capturing the moment officers came for her father.
Terrible to feel and see your family being broken apart.
And this dreamer now facing deportation after her impassioned speech, as Homeland Security reportedly considers a new policy to separate mothers and children at the U.S. border.
Hasta la vista, Arnold Schwarzenegger calling it quits on Celebrity Apprentice, while he says former host Donald Trump is to blame.
Hey, Donald, I have a great idea. Why don't we switch jobs?
Their feud taken to a whole new level this morning.
And caught on camera, dramatic rescue. A toddler not breathing, his mother desperate for help.
It's something I'll remember forever.
The quick-thinking teen taking matters into her own hands, credited for saving the little boy's life.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Hey, good morning. As President Trump wakes up in Florida this morning, he is hitting Twitter hard.
That is certainly an understatement. His latest salvo, quote, terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism.
And there was also this. The first meeting Jeff Sessions had with the Russian ambassador was set up by the Obama administration under education program for 100 ambassadors. And then, quote, just out, the same Russian ambassador that met Jeff Sessions visited the Obama White House 22 times and 4 times last year alone.
And of course, that is a reference to the meetings that Trump's Attorney General Jeff Sessions now admits that he had with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. during the presidential campaign as part of his capacities as senator.
A growing list of Democrats are calling for Sessions to step down, but Trump, as we can see from his tweets this morning, has the AG's back, at least for now. And we're going to get the latest on all of this from ABC's David Wright, who's with the president in Palm Beach. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Paula. The White House had been hoping to change the subject from the Russia story, but it is the story that just won't go away, in part because the president keeps tweeting about it. This morning, as you say, he's on a tear, responding, it seems, to stories from Breitbart Media and the Daily Caller. The president has been trying his best to change the subject.
We're going to make you famous.
On Friday, heading to Orlando to visit a Catholic school where hundreds of low-income students receive state scholarships. But Russia continues to dominate the headlines as reporters and lawmakers press for clear answers on the Trump campaign's contacts with Russia. Here's former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page in February.
Did you have any meetings last year with Russian officials in Russia, outside Russia, anywhere?
I had no meetings, no meetings. I might have said hello to a few people, you know, as they're walking by me.
And then just a few weeks later,
like, did you meet Sergei Kislyak in Cleveland? Did you talk to him?
I'm not going to deny that I talked with him. Although
so you did talk to him?
I will say that I never met him anywhere outside of Cleveland. Let's just say that much.
The only time that you met him was in Cleveland.
That I may have met him, possibly, it might have been in Cleveland.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is drafting a detailed explanation for his answer to this question at his confirmation hearings.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
Sessions now admits that wasn't the whole truth.
In retrospect, if I should have slowed down and said, but I did meet one Russian official a couple of times. That would be the ambassador.
All 9 Democrats on the Judiciary Committee have asked for a new hearing to question Sessions, but the Republican chairman, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, overruled them. Meanwhile, President Trump is mocking top Democrats who've called for an investigation. First, tweeting a photo of Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer eating a Krispy Kreme donut with Vladimir Putin in 2003. Trump then took a shot at House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, tweeting, "I hereby demand a second investigation of her." Pelosi shot back that Trump obviously doesn't know the difference between an official meeting photographed by the press and a closed secret meeting that the Attorney General lied about under oath, her words on Twitter, in fact, which seems to be the primary method of political debate in this country at this point. Paula?
Yeah, Twitter certainly seems to be popular with our politicians. Thank you very much for your reporting, David. And at the center of this firestorm is the Russian ambassador who met with at least 5 members of President Trump's team. ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross takes a closer look at Sergei Kislyak.
As a career Russian diplomat, Sergei Kislyak, the ambassador to the United States, is skilled at public speaking, delivering what the FBI calls utter falsehoods.
The government of Russian Federation is not involved in any hacking of the type you are discussing.
And now the ambassador claims the meetings he had with key members of the Trump campaign before and after the election were nothing unusual, not connected to the hacking.
We do not interfere into internal affairs of the United States.
Other Russian diplomats are defending Kislyak on Twitter, saying the U.S. media has hit rock bottom and questioning if critics even know what a diplomat's job is. And now the contacts between Putin's Kremlin and some of Trump's closest advisors are at the center of the FBI and congressional investigations.
We need to know, is anyone compromised? Are there risks to the country because someone is compromised?
Especially because some of the Americans involved are accused of not telling the truth about their meetings with the ambassador. One aspect of the investigation involves a tight focus on the week of the Republican convention in July of last year. July 18th, the party's official platform gives a big victory to Russia by downgrading U.S. support for Ukraine.
The champagne corks were going off when that happened.
July 20th, Ambassador Kislyak meets with Senator Sessions and Trump advisor Carter Page at the convention, something Page later tried to deny.
I had no meetings, no meetings.
July 21st, Donald Trump accepts the Republican nomination for president.
Thank you very much.
And the very next day, July 22nd, WikiLeaks posts the first of the hacked Democratic Party emails. Brian Ross, ABC News, New York.
Okay, a lot to talk about here. So let's bring in political analyst Tara Setmeyer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. Let's talk about these tweets, and they continue to come from the president about the allegations of wiretapping. Here's one of them. Is it legal for a sitting president to be wiretapping a race for president prior to an election? Turned down by court earlier, a new low. He then goes on to compare it to Nixon and Watergate and refers to Obama as a bad or sick guy. What is this all about?
Well, it's clearly all about deflection. Donald Trump is, he has a mentor. I think in another tweet he talked about McCarthyism. His mentor was Roy Cohn, who was one of the chief counsels during McCarthy's trials and hearings back in those times. So he was taught to double down on things and never apologize. So this is his way, instead of having a mature investigation, letting things go through the Intelligence Committee, perhaps having a special prosecutor investigating what's going on with these contacts with Russia. Now the president is throwing this out here to get us to start talking about this now and these rather hyperbolic comparisons to McCarthyism or Nixon, instead of paying attention to what's really going on with their contacts with Russia.
Was there wiretapping?
Well, we don't know. I mean, for the president to put something like that out there, that is a really wild accusation. We do know there has been reporting that there were FISA requests because there were people in the intelligence community. Our intelligence community was very curious about some of these contacts between Trump campaign officials and Russia, which I think was a legitimate concern given how we know Russia can be and their posture and their interference in our election. there were requests, FISA court requests for these wiretaps. Now, whether that was actually done in Trump Tower, whether that was to the degree and detail that President Trump is now saying, we just don't know that yet. So I find it irresponsible for the President of the United States to levy these types of accusations against our former president without backing it up with concrete information.
And you still identify as a conservative commentator. Correct. I want to mention that as well. The other tweets, and there are many, have to do with Jeff Sessions. Of course, Donald Trump is sticking by his AG, and he says just out the same Russian ambassador that met Jeff Sessions visited the Obama White House 22 times and 4 times last year alone. But that's a false equivalency, is it not?
Yeah, I think so, because no one is disputing. See, this is a typical tactic by Trump and his surrogates. No one's disputing whether Jeff Sessions, in his capacity as a senator, particularly on the Armed Services Committee, should have met with the Russian ambassador. That is normal procedure for elected officials. I worked on Capitol Hill for many years. I worked for a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He met with foreign dignitaries all the time. So that's not the discussion. The discussion is how forthcoming Jeff Sessions was about actually having those meetings. If there was nothing nefarious, if there was nothing untoward about them, he should have been forthcoming in testimony. And he has recused himself, which I think was a good step to do thus far. And he'll go back and he'll clarify his position. But it's not the first official. This is now the 4th person with the Trump campaign that has these questionable contacts and wasn't completely forthright about it. And that just lends to further question and inquiry about why. What are they hiding, if anything?
Yeah, sure. This story is almost certainly not going away. Tara Setmeyer, we really appreciate your time and analysis this morning. Appreciate it. We're going to move on now to another story involving the Trump administration, making news on another front right now. ABC News has learned the Department of Homeland Security is considering separating families who illegally cross the U.S. border. ABC's Gloria Riviera is in Washington with more on this proposed policy. Gloria, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan. That's right. Part of President Trump's overhaul of immigration policy would prioritize merit, employability, and skills over family ties. That is a tenet many Republicans, not all, have long advocated. This morning, we are already seeing what can be painful repercussions.
This morning, sources tell ABC News the Department of Homeland Security is actively considering a plan to separate mothers and children illegally crossing the U.S. border. Officials briefed on the proposal characterize the move as a deterrent.
We're getting really bad dudes out of this country.
The possible plan comes as scenes like this one making headlines nationwide. A distraught Fatima Avalika, 13 years old, recording the moment immigration officers came for her father, taking him into custody as he drops her off for school, citing multiple prior criminal convictions.
It's really hard what we're going through. It's terrible to feel and see your family being broken apart.
Avalika's family is not alone.
People are scared. This is the #1 topic of conversation amongst immigrant families.
In Mississippi, 22-year-old Daniela Vargas hid in a closet as she watched ICE agents detain her father and brother. Protected under President Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Act, known as DACA, Vargas has been an outspoken critic of Trump's immigration policies.
Today, my father and brother await deportation, while I continue to fight this battle as a dreamer, to help contribute to this country, which I feel that is very much my country.
Despite having no criminal record, Vargas herself was arrested and processed for deportation after giving a press conference at an immigration rally. ICE officials tell ABC News she was the subject of a targeted immigration enforcement action because her status under DACA lapsed in late 2016.
Vargas's attorney has said the young woman could very well be deported to Argentina without a hearing. Her DACA expired in November, and her attorney says it took her until February to save the nearly $500 she needed to renew her status. That window, ICE says, makes her ineligible for a hearing. Paula?
All right, Gloria, thanks for sharing those personal stories this morning for us. Also, in the news this morning, the FBI is assuring Jewish leaders that threats against their community centers are indeed a top priority. This comes as word of one suspected arrest, and ABC's Adrian Bankert has more.
The recent rash of threats and vandalism against Jewish institutions spreading across the country, from desecrated headstones at cemeteries to bomb threats forcing hundreds to evacuate. There have been 130 cases of hostility targeting the Jewish community in multiple states, including New York, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Alabama.
The rising tide of hate and anti-Semitism has been
unleashed.
This morning, the man seen here on a local TV show, Juan Thompson, under arrest in connection to threats allegedly made against at least 8 Jewish organizations. A possible romance gone wrong, accusations of cyberbullying, and anti-Semitic terror. In newly filed court documents, federal prosecutors accused the 31-year-old of waging a campaign to harass and intimidate. Though it's who he was allegedly intimidating that has made this case of particular interest. Thompson's Twitter feed targeting his ex-girlfriend, claiming she's racist. Authorities saying he made those anti-Semitic threats in his ex's name in attempts to frame her. The arrest comes on the same day FBI Director James Comey held a meeting with Jewish community leaders, making it clear this is just one arrest.
There are many more JCC bomb threats that have not been solved, and communities are hurting.
And this latest arrest involves threats to Jewish community centers, including this one right behind us here in Manhattan. Thompson, a former online journalist, was allegedly fired for fabricating sources at his last employer. He faces charges including cyber stalking. Dan and Paula.
Adrienne Bankert, thank you very much for your reporting this morning. A lot of other news this morning, and as always, for that, we get it over to Ron. Good morning.
Hey,
sir.
good morning to you, Dan and Paula, Diane, Robert. Good morning, everyone. We're going to begin in Iraq, where thousands of civilians are fleeing the city of Mosul as Iraqi forces advance in the battle for the ISIS stronghold. This as the World Health Organization is responding to what's believed to be the first chemical weapon attack there. Doctors saying that at least 12 people are showing signs of exposure to chemical agents that may have been released in 2 separate mortar attacks by ISIS. International law forbids using chemical weapons. And in Malaysia, the families of the passengers that disappeared on board a Malaysian Airlines flight 3 years ago are now raising money to continue the search for clues. The government suspended the search in the Indian Ocean this past January, saying they had little hope of finding anything. The families are hoping to raise $15 million. And a new development in the violent police takedown at a North Carolina high school earlier this year. The Roseville, North Carolina police officer caught on camera slamming a female student to the ground while allegedly breaking up a fight, is resigning. He had been placed on leave in January. And the TSA announcing that agents will start using new, more rigorous pat-down procedures at airport checkpoints. The pat-downs are being described as more intimate in nature. The enhanced security measures come after a study by the Department of Homeland Security found some TSA agents unable to find hidden weapons in pat-down tests. And in Scotland, an amazing rescue at sea off the coast of Shetland. 5 fishermen forced to jump ship when their boat started sinking. A minute later, the vessel was gone. Fortunately, the entire crew was rescued from the icy waters by a lifeboat and a Coast Guard helicopter. And finally, 2 brothers with a unique talent taking the internet by storm. The young duo developed a prowess for, you see it there, flipping dough at their dad's New Jersey pizzeria.
Yes.
But don't worry, the boys are putting their hands all over your pie. Their dad bought them rubber pizza dough so they can flip all they want without anyone having to eat the Play-Doh. A recent post, check this out, of that video of the Doughboys, as I call them, has gotten more than 15
That's
million.
incredible.
15,
Yes.
sorry, 14 to be precise, 14 million views.
So good.
Look
It's
at
like
that.
the
Isn't that
Harlem
cool?
Globetrotters with
Yeah.
pizza dough.
Yeah, they're good, huh?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they don't actually bake the rubber dough, because
Yeah, with
that'd be a
that.
bad
Swap
idea.
that out.
So I think I was a little overly optimistic. I assembled my patio furniture last week. This week, I think I need to move it under some shelter.
Well, and
It's
but
cold.
you didn't put the turtleneck too far away, so that was a good call. Well, some wild swings in temperatures, and this is what happened yesterday just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I-81 and I-80, dozens of accidents there, just from little snow squalls that came through. Injuries, and unfortunately, 1 fatality. On the radar this morning, we're seeing another pulse just east of Chicago and through parts of Indiana. Again, this is the areas that had record-breaking high temperatures just a couple of days ago, and a rude awakening down below freezing down across Atlanta today and tomorrow, even colder across the Northeast. And, you know, some of the flowers and trees are blooming down across the south, so that may do some damage, but then a return to more warmth. So wild swings in temperatures this week. Quick check in the National Outlook. Here now, your local forecast.
Heavy coat required this morning. Our feels like temperatures in the teens to 20s, so bundle up. These values are factoring in our current winds, which are a little bit breezy through this afternoon. Here's a look of what's going on today. Lots of bright sunshine, area of high pressure overhead. That's keeping us dry and bright, but also allowing those northwesterly winds to stick around. Overnight tonight, if you have those Saturday night plans, again, it's going to be another cold one. Temperatures in the teens to 20s, tracking another warm up, though, into next week.
We'll keep those winter coats handy, at least for another couple of weeks until spring officially arrives.
Okay.
All right? All right, got that, Ron?
Whatever you say.
Okay. Ron's policy is to do whatever Rob says. A quick acting teenager is being credited with saving a child's life, and it is all caught on camera.
She sprang into action when she heard a mother's cries for help, and Diane has the story for us this morning. Good morning, Diane.
I want to prep you because when you see this video, it's hard to believe it has a happy ending. But this Tennessee toddler